Hi, my name's Nick. I'm here to talk about being trans. My entire LGBT journey started when I was 12, 13, 12 and then trans when I was 13. But so first, I thought I was a girl, and I did notice that I dressed more masculine than feminine. I didn't really like wearing dresses. I didn't like the bedazzled stuff as much when I grew up. So I started, I was straight, whatever, I'm just a straight girl. And then I get into junior high, and I noticed myself looking at girls in a way that I would have been looking at guys, and I was like, well, maybe I'm not straight. So I realized that at the time I was bisexual. And then I started feeling, not quite girl, not quite guy. For a minute I identified as bigender, but definitely leaned more towards masculine. When I was 13, I was on a app on the Nintendo DSi called Flipnote Hatena. Flipnote Hatena is somewhere that I met one of my best friends. I made a lot of connections, I improved my art there, but when I first joined, I introduced myself as bigender, and then soon after that I started going as a guy, and I had this thing where, I thought I was a girl, but I was presenting as a guy online because that's just what I thought was, how it was supposed to be. My original Tumblr URL was Dave Raff, which Dave is a nickname of mine, really old nickname, and the RAF, the RAF, stood for really a female. So I kind of had this, I'm posing as a guy, but I'm not really a guy online. But soon enough, I realized, hey, I'm doing this so often online where I'm pretending to be a guy that maybe I'm not really just pretending. My hair started getting shorter, my clothes started getting baggier, I started looking for binders online, chest binders. At some point, I was just like, hey, all my hair is cut short, and I feel this way, and I'm a guy now. It didn't really go over well with some people. The school that I went to had some very unsupportive teachers, but I think, realizing as soon as I did helped me grow into the kind of person I want to be, knowing who I was, and even though it was a struggle, I still was able to help myself along. Before I was, out as a trans man, I was bullied a lot. I had, every year of school, basically, I had some kind of problem where I was getting bullied, which was really lame growing up, your whole life being picked on and stuff. When I came out, that was a whole other thing for people to get on me about. So there was a couple times where I would say, hey, that's, somebody would call me a girl, and I'd say, hey, that's not what I am, and then they would insist that I was a girl. Intentionally call me she, intentionally say my birth name, which was really frustrating. In fact, there was, at that school, the school that I was at when I first came out, I got in school suspension a lot, so I got a lot of detention. And there was one time these guys were picking on me, and I looked to the teacher and I say, hey, will you tell them that I'm not a girl? Will you please help me? And he said, well, hey, stop picking on Nelson, stop picking on her. And I'm like, well, I'm asking you to stop telling me, I'm asking you to tell them to stop calling me a girl, so what's the point? And then I found out he would call me Nelson, which is my last name. He would call me Nelson and not Nick, because he said he would not call me Nick until it was changed in the system. So my name, I didn't get my name changed until May of 2015, so I, lasted a long time with a name that was not mine. And at first it didn't bother me as much. I think one of the first things I remember after coming out as trans, and all my hair was cut short, and I was wearing a binder, and I was walking from the bus stop over to my house, and somebody in my neighborhood said, hey, are you lesbian? I said no. And that was like it was so easy then, so I don't know what happened. I think as I realized more and more that I was not what I grew up as, that, you know, it was harming me when people were intentionally malicious. You know, then my life was about appearing as masculine as I could because I was afraid of being called a girl constantly, which I was, and that triggered so much dysphoria that it's kind of a hard thing to talk about now that I'm sitting in front of a camera talking about it. Growing up trans was a journey, and it was a hard one, but I'm happy where I'm at now, and I'm really glad for that. The hardest thing about starting hormone replacement therapy was getting my dad to let me do it. It's not like he was unsupportive or, you know, transphobic or mean about it or anything. He was just concerned that I would be making changes to my body, physical changes that I wouldn't be able to reverse. And I understand that. Never got mad at my dad for that. Maybe in the time I was, you know, frustrated that I couldn't just do what I wanted to, but growing up, you know, later on in life, I was like, you know, he was just looking out for me. I remember my mom called me upstairs. See, I had a knack a long time ago for knowing exactly what somebody was going to say, or having a general idea of what somebody was going to say right before they said it. So I went upstairs. My mom called me upstairs, totally unprompted. I was talking to her, and she goes, "Hey, I have some news for you." And immediately I say, "Dad says I can start T." And she goes, "How did you know that?" And I fell to the ground. I was ecstatic. I was freaking out that I was finally able to, you know, make these changes to myself. And I remember that I watched a documentary or documentaries or videos on YouTube and stuff of all these trans guys who were going through these changes themselves, and I would cry because I never had that. But now I had this opportunity to help myself and make myself happy, and it was one of the most exciting times of my life. And I'm really thankful to my dad for letting me. I don't think he really understands how important that was to me. I don't really go deep into, you know, my life and stuff, but his agreement to allowing me to do that really changed my life. And you know, if I didn't have the support from my father and my parents that I did, I might not be here talking to you right now. And sorry. Anyway, one of the big things was weight gain, which was very unfortunate. I'm a big guy, I'm sure you can tell. I didn't used to be, but things go how they go. And a lot of that is, you know, so here's the thing about weight gain with HRT. So if you work out when you're on testosterone, you will gain muscle. I just never worked out. If I had been working out this whole time, I'd be buff as hell. Other than that, hair growth, body hair was a big thing. It's funny because I used to hate my arm hair when I was a girl. I had kind of dark arm hair, and it always bothered me, and I wanted to get it waxed. And then I didn't notice how much I loved it until I started testosterone. And then I was like, oh, this arm hair is really dark. And then my leg hair started getting dark, and then my ass hair started getting dark. My bottom half looks like a beast. But I absolutely love it. It's, you know, it makes me feel good, it makes me feel masculine, and even though I'm kind of a feminine guy, I have that to say, you know, hey, I'm full of this testosterone that, you know, I never would have had before. Facial hair, I have chops. I can grow these mutton chops, I can grow kind of a mustache, and I grow down here. It's been over 3 years. I can't grow a full beard yet, but I'm hoping that maybe when I get older I will be able to. For now, I will deal with the chops, and that will make me happy for the time being. At least Raven likes it a lot, so. In November of 2017, so about a year ago, I got top surgery, which was life-changing. My breasts were very, very large, and I had many back problems, and I had to bind my chest, and eventually I was binding so much and so often and for so long that we think it started to damage my ribs. I do have breathing problems, which I had before, but I think the binding made them worse. It feels like my ribs are bent in a little bit, deformed. Eventually, I had to only wear my binder for work, which, imagine how horrible that is for me with these big gahangas, you know, out in public all the time. It was very, very, I don't know the word, it was nerve-wracking, I think is the right word. It was, you know, all the time. That was one of the big times that I started getting misgendered, and one of the, you know, hardest points of being trans, because I had, you know, I dealt with it when I was younger, but then I had come all this way, and then all of a sudden I have to let it out that I'm not, you know, a cis guy. But, you know, eventually November comes, and there's this whole process, and it was absolutely ridiculous. But so the clinic that I went to wanted, if I'm remembering correctly, they wanted one note, or they wanted two notes, one from my doctor and one from my counselor, who said, yeah, this kid needs to be put on, or needs top surgery. So I got the note from my doctor, and then I got the note from my therapist, and then the clinic said, oh, well, no, you need to see somebody else for this note. Like, okay, well, why didn't you tell me that before? So then I had to see somebody else for the note, and we happened to get somebody that my mom used to see to write a note, and then, oh, well, the person you need to get a note from, it has to be, you know, a specialist. So I'm like, okay, and this goes over weeks and weeks. So finally I saw a therapist or a counselor in Seattle, where the clinic was, down the street or something, and she wrote it for me. It was one appointment. It was like, yeah, I'm trans, and I need top surgery, and I have back problems, and it's very dysphoric. She said, okay, and then that went through. But the loopholes that we had, or the hoops that we had to jump through, were absolutely ridiculous, and it lasted for such a long time, and it was like, can I please just finally get it done? Once it happened, it was, like I said before, it was life-changing. I immediately had no more back problems, for the most part. You know, the main things about my back were gone. I cried when I first looked at my bare chest. I still had the drains in, and the nipples covered, and the tape on and stuff, but it was so emotional, and it's, you know, I keep using it, but seriously life-changing. And I'm so lucky that I had that option, and that, you know, it went smoothly, and it got done, and it, you know, I can't believe it was a year ago. It was a year ago already that I had my big giant tits taken off. And I thought about that last month when, you know, it was the 1 year anniversary or whatever. I'm like, wow, I've already, you know, I don't know what it is. It feels like it's been longer and shorter, but I don't know if it's because I'm happier. I don't know if it's because I'm more comfortable. Something about it is just fantastic. One of the biggest things, I think, for any trans man who's looking at top surgery is how much it's going to cost. I got very, very lucky. My family's insurance, the deductible was paid off completely. My top surgery was 100% free. I did get letters in the mail about how much I would have been charged. The stay at the clinic was about $14,000, and the services from the doctor was about $8,000. I don't know where it's going to be anywhere else, but that was my experience with it, which would have been a lot of money if I had to pay it, and that's really common for anywhere else. One of the weirdest parts, so I had never had surgery before my top surgery, so I had never been put under for anything. What they did was they took me in to the operating room, and first they tried to use epidurals in my back, which is one of the most uncomfortable, maybe worst pains that I've ever felt. It felt like many needles stabbing into my spine, but when they couldn't find the spot to make them work, eventually they just said, hey, we just gotta put you under, which is like, I expected that in the first place. So I remember laying down and then getting into the car. I remember very vaguely walking, like getting up from the wheelchair into the car. I remember some of the car ride, and then I remember getting to the hotel that we stayed at for a night afterwards. And then comes the big question that I didn't really realize was that big until the conceptualization of this video, and that is, do I want to be trans? Now, I spent a very long time struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and all these kinds of things. So it took a long time for me to love myself. I think with the help of my fiance, I've come very far. I'm happy. I, care about myself. I practice self-care. I would say now that I love myself. I love who I am. I have accepted that I'm trans. But if I could have not dealt with every day hearing she, every day hearing the wrong name, if I could have gone without the bullying, if I, didn't have to pay money just to change what I look like to feel happy, if I didn't have to deal with all that, fuck no, I wouldn't have chosen to be trans. I think a lot of people don't know that. I'm proud to be who I am, but, my wish is that I was just a cis guy. And I thought about it, and, even if I just stayed a cis girl, which couldn't happen. That obviously, wouldn't have worked out. But if for some reason I, didn't have my brain saying, hey, you're a guy, I much would have preferred to be cis, and I didn't have to deal with all that. I didn't have to, take a shot every week. I didn't have to go under surgery. I didn't have, So even though I don't really want to be trans, like I said, I'm still proud of who I am. I still love myself. I think my journey has shaped who I am. I think I'm a good person, and I think part of that was, learning myself and having this experience. Though I don't want to be trans necessarily, I don't think I would change how I grew up. It's kind of a tricky question, actually. And like I said, I only thought about it recently. It's been hard, but acceptance is key, I think. I think one of the big things is a lot of realizing your identity is doing a lot of soul searching. What makes you happy? What do you want to be? What style of clothes do you like? What hairstyle do you like? You kind of got to think about all that and think, does this drive me more towards a masculine side or a feminine side? And that's not to say that trans guys can't have long hair and they can't wear dresses or anything. That's totally up to the guys. But for me, I definitely leaned more towards the masculine stuff. Nowadays, I'm okay with wearing kind of feminine stuff, but my realization came from, I didn't like feminine clothes and stuff. A good thing to help you find out, which is what my friend suggested, is find people close to you and have them test out different pronouns. So have them call you he, or have them call you a guy, or have them call you by a name that you want to go by. If that makes you happy, if that makes you feel right, if that makes you feel, like that's what it's supposed to be, maybe you can start looking into, you're not really as much of a girl as you thought you were. Some people just know. Other people, it takes a long time for them to figure it out. As that same friend suggested, he saw a post one day that said, if you wish you were a boy, be a boy. And that's like the easiest thing to get through to somebody. If that's what you want, just do it. If that's what feels right to you, feel free. There are struggles, and there are going to be bigots, and there are going to be transphobes, and there are going to be assholes. That's how it's going to be with anything. And yeah, of course, trans people definitely have struggles with bathrooms and, misgendering and suicidal thoughts and depression and stuff. Once you get through all of it, once you're at a place where you're happy, your whole life is different. It took such a long time for me to be happy, but starting hormones, getting my top surgery, I consider myself fully transitioned now. I'm thrilled about life. So that was basically my trans story, what it's like for me to live as a trans man. I'm always open and willing to explain who I am and how I live. I'm always open for, comments and questions and stuff. It's never been a problem. I'm very open about myself. If you like the video and possibly want to see more stuff like this, you can leave a like and subscribe. You can leave a comment down below if you have any questions about HRT, or if you have any questions about, being trans. Thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And this was a little difficult to make, but I'm really excited to put it out. So, thanks, guys.